David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. There have been quite a few videos about what we want to see in Bond 26. I myself have made many, pretty much since the ending of No Time to Die, and it continues forward in the news that Amazon has taken over creative control of James Bond, and they will be the ones to shape the future of what we have in a James Bond movie, from actor to director to the writers, heck, to the look and the feel of it, fashion, style. It's all going to be the creatives over at Amazon. And I love the videos that others have done on what they want to see in Bond 26. I probably, arguably, consume them all. I know, I have that much time on my hands. Meh. But I thought I would do one about what I don't want to see in Bond 26. I know, I'm usually the very half is glass full guy. Heck, half is, the glass is overflowing guy. I tend to be very positive, very, happy-go-lucky. So this sounds almost like it would be a negative thing, but it's really not. It's as Bond fans, as people that have become, dare I say it, 007 connoisseurs, we also know specifically what we would kind of wince at. What we would see up on the screen and go, ooh, why'd you gotta go there? Why do you gotta hurt me like that? So I thought I would go over just a few and just have a chit chat with you and look in the comments and see, do you feel the same way? Or maybe you have ones incremental to mine that I haven't even thought about that you do not want to see in Bond 26. Now, some of you out there are saying, well, is there a hope? Is there a hope? Is there a prayer that Amazon, powers that be, see this video and go, wow, we gotta stay away from those pitfalls? Probably not. I mean, are they doing research on what the audience adores and likes? Highly likely. Are they taking a look at the tropes that have made James Bond triumphant and what makes them work and which movies didn't work and what aspects? Probably. But happily, I don't believe that Amazon is going to make the next James Bond movie in a petri dish or in a data mining field. It's a minefield out there. What film? Pierce Brosnan, Die Another Day. No, I think that they're going to use their creative senses to come up with a great story, great character arc, great bad guy, all the tropes that we want. So without further ado, here are the things that I don't want to see in the new James Bond movie. And this is just my opinion, so here it goes. I don't want to see a James Bond that's overly conflicted. I know that we've had very angsty Bond moments before. Heck, almost every Bond has a moment, some more than others. The Daniel Craig arc had a lot of angsty moments. Should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? Spectre throwing away the gun, No Time to Die, a lot of conflicting moments. Daddy issues, anyone? But I don't want that. I want James Bond to be a little bit more like Sean Connery's James Bond, where he isn't conflicted about duty. He isn't conflicted about honor. He isn't conflicted about his job and his mission. And he's not conflicted in himself. James Bond is going to be fallible. And because of that, he needs to just be accepting of that. He almost needs to be that individual in the world that says, look, I'm not perfect. You want perfect? Go out and build your perfect guy who doesn't exist. Me, I'm fallible. And why do I want that? I want a James Bond that's unapologetic because that's the swagger and charm and, yes, snarkiness of James Bond that I can't do myself in my real world. I would be beheaded. They would be calling the morgue on me if I acted like that, either at my job or in my family life or in front of my wife. Can't do it. So I'm living semi-vicariously through James Bond and the way he travels and the missions he goes on. And yes, his attitude, which is very accepting of himself. He has to walk into a casino filled with people and swagger, not walk, swagger up to a woman and charm her, or a bad guy and take the mickey out of him and say something offensive, push him to the brink of trying to get revenge on James Bond. That's who James Bond is. I don't want a conflicted character. Now, can he be conflicted with aspects of the mission? M says, by all means necessary, you need to do this mission. And if there are people to be saved, don't save them. Just they're expendable. Collateral damage, as they say. Do I want James Bond to be conflicted about that and save them and complete the mission? Yes. Why not? Right? He's a juggler. He can do many different things, but I don't want an emotionally conflicted James Bond. The angsty, James Bond, please. No, thank you. No, thank you. And I hope there are those out there saying, but I like the conflicted, and the new audience likes conflicted. I would go back to the most popular blockbuster films in the last 10 years. Heck, why not? 5 years since the pandemic. And you will notice that the biggest ones don't spend an inordinate amount of time focused on the characters' issues. If there's conflict with others, or there's conflict with the mission, but there's not all this conflict within. There can be a little bit, right? Hints, flavors, sprinkle it, but don't overkill it. Excuse the pun, overkill. That would be a great James Bond film title. Write it down. Somebody? No? Okay. Second thing that I don't want in my Bond 26 is I don't want them to take the Mickey out of James Bond. Okay, so that's a term I've got to explain. Take the Mickey. Take the Mickey out of somebody. I take the Mickey out of my friends all the time, and they take the Mickey out of me, and my family does it too. What does that mean? It means to sort of deflate the moment, deflate the person, to bring them down, to either neutralize this or tear them down a little bit. And I don't want Bond to be picked apart on screen. I don't want somebody, whether it's another 00 or even the bosses or anybody like that, I don't want them to take the Mickey out of each other. They can take the Mickey out of James Bond when the bad guy is going against Bond, and Bond tries to irritate the bad guy, and the bad guy tries to irritate Bond and take the Mickey out of him. Great. But that's like a tete-a-tete. That's verbal dueling. That's mental dueling. And James Bond is all about that. That's fine. But there has been this trend in Hollywood where the hero is seen as a little bit of a deadbeat, or a has-been, or is taken down 6 or 7 rungs because I don't know why he's entitled. I don't know. I don't know why they're doing this, but they've done it to some of my favorite heroes. And I just look at the screen, I look at Boba Fett, or I look at, Indiana Jones or Han Solo, or it's just, the list goes on of some of my favorite heroes, and they show them as like has-beens, even in The Flash. I love the parts with Michael Keaton in Batman, but initially in the beginning, they show Bruce Wayne as this hairy kind of has-been type hero. Now he has a reawakening and he rises like the Phoenix, so good on them for doing that, but still, why? I want Bond 26, new actor, start off, he's 2 or 3 years into it, he's got his swagger, he's got his self-confidence, he's got his charm, and something, everybody either respects him, or at least, if they're not emulating them, they're kind of like, this guy's got his, shite together. Let's have that Bond. The Bond from Connery's time, heck, even Timothy Dalton's time, heck, even Brosnan's time, everybody around him had a regard for him. It's like, oh, okay, here comes James Bond. Internally, even at MI6, there was that level of respect. It wasn't trying to rip apart, take down, question. Bond is this larger-than-life character, even in his own world. So why would you treat him like a deadbeat? And that brings me to the third thing that I want, or don't want rather, in the new James Bond movie. I don't want there to be an embarrassment of who James Bond is and who he has been. And this is not a No Time to Die thing or an Eon thing, or it's kind of an Amazon thing. Like I'm saying to a lot of people online and offline that I'm excited about what Amazon could do. The trepidation in what they could do, however, is hiding the different tropes that we've all embraced, or the aspects that we love about James Bond. For example, I don't want them to be gun shy about the Bond theme. Now, I love Casino Royale. It's my favorite Bond film. My favorite. Number one in many people's lists. But they are so stingy. They're so stingy with the James Bond theme. I don't want them to be stingy with the Bond tropes. I want a gun barrel. I want, titles that look like James Bond titles, in a song that feels like a James Bond song, and not be embarrassed of what came before and say, something, let's do it. Maybe put our own fingerprint, our own DNA on it, because we're Amazon. Great, do it. I love experimentation in James Bond movies. I'm glad I finished that sentence. But the reality is that don't be embarrassed about James Bond. Now, Road to a Million, 007 Road to a Million, gets a lot of bangs. There were some aspects I enjoyed, but it gets a lot of socks and hits from the Bond community because it felt like it was embarrassed to be a James Bond show. They hid the recognition of the players and the contestants in knowing James Bond scenarios. Why do you do that? They hid certain Bond opportunities. Why did you do that? I mean, it was like a James Bond show that didn't know it was a James Bond show or didn't want to be a James Bond show when it grew up. There was, I don't know, it felt a little embarrassed about its James Bond connection. Don't do that in the next movie. I don't want a Bond 26 that walks away from who he is, what has come before us, the different tropes, the triumphant moments. Don't be embarrassed. You have this amazing, 63-year film history and even longer in the books of people who love the character as they are. Don't go changing to try to please me. Was that Billy Joel? I think it was Billy Joel. Certainly wasn't me. It wasn't me. I can't sing. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But don't go changing to try to please a new audience that doesn't exist. This audience that you think that exists out there, I'm telling you, it's the same people, the same things that they love about entertainment and action and escapism that was sitting in the seats in 1962. Yes, I get it. There's been so much, it's in fashion to say, you don't want to make James Bond for the old man. All right, easy there, ageism. But at my age, I speak to 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, people in their teens, and I ask them what they love about James Bond. And here's a shocker. Buckle up for this. They like the same things that I like. Coincidence? I don't think so. So don't be embarrassed about putting those aspects that have always thrilled the audiences, the escapism and different aspects of James Bond. All right, so this next one, it's for me. It's for me. I'm being selfish. It's for my channel. You're surrounded by it. Don't turn James Bond into an everyday Joe when it comes to style. Now, I love casual Bond. Heck, this very shirt, this is the Zaritsky shirt that some of you have seen. Terry, the way it's cut, the way it's formed, what it's made out of, the different aspects, even down to the buttons, was inspired by James Bond and how James Bond has influenced me in how I wear things. That came from incredible style moments, and it continued in No Time to Die. I have these things up now because I gravitate to the style. I love the watches. This is the 60th anniversary Omega watches. I love the accessories, the shoes, the pants, all this. Why? Because James Bond is a style icon. And if they turn him into sort of an everyday Joe or a Jason Bourne, for example, or even an Ethan Hunt, who's, about a rung higher than Jason Bourne as far as style, you lose that James Bond style essence. And I'm not talking fashion here, I'm talking style. Part of his style is his attitude, his swagger, his one-liners, what he does. But the other part is his style, like, the fact that he's wearing these great, beautifully cut suits. The fact that even when he's casual, everything looks clean. It fits him well, right? I mean, look at that. You got a trench coat here. A trench coat doesn't look right on me, but it looks right on James Bond because it's part of his style and who he is, and he suits the environment. And by the way, this is going to come down to, of course, hiring and bringing in the right creatives when it comes to costume design. I'm sure they're still going to have that connection, but there is a chance that they could say, well, let's make James Bond more relevant to every person out there, and let's dress him in something very simple. Or, let's not make him the style icon that he is. Or let's put sacky suits on him from Joseph A. Banks. Sorry, Joseph A. Banks. You're going to miss a trick here. So do not deflate, do not deplete, do not neutralize the style aspect of James Bond when it comes to clothing and fashion and accessory. Fleming did such an amazing job making James Bond this individual that, yes, we could put our own faces on him, right? He wasn't overly described, little pieces, but the finer things in life, the fact that he would live life to the fullest through his locations, his travel, his food, and yes, his clothing, having the finest things in life, is because he could die at any moment. So why on earth would you spend less on what you wear and engage with if you could be murdered for breakfast? So James Bond has to continue this forward in Bond 26. So do not walk away from that style aspect. All right, here's another do not do in Bond 26. I don't want in Bond 26 for the plot to be something that is too convoluted. Now, I want to break this down and why I'm saying this as a highlight of something that I do not want. I think if you go back to certain Bond movies, the favorites, the ones that everybody can connect with, the ones that you introduce to your nieces and nephews, your sons and daughters, your friends, your spouses or girlfriends that you just meet, they're the simplest. Very simple. You've got Bond, you've got a conflict, you've got mayhem, you've got a bad guy, you've got a henchman, you've got Bond girls, you've got solutions in Q branch, and you've got a resolution and a confrontation with the bad guy. This is not rocket science. And I'm not being snarky here. I think that as soon as you become too many layers and too many complications in a Bond film, and it doesn't follow a chronological cadence, you get off the mark. I'm not going to name movies because chances are if I start doing that, I'm going to name some of your favorite ones and you're going to stop watching this video. And I don't want to do that because my point is that do not overcomplicate the plot. Keep it simple. I just literally, and I don't have a script. This is improv, right? There's no cuts or anything like that. I'm messing up galore, but I continue forward. I just said the cadence of a typical Bond film, but it is the nuances, it's the visuals, it's the characters, it's the environments that you put Bond in that make it so special. The plot itself can be raised up and down depending on, do you want world domination or do you want a kind of a smaller adventure? Do you want it to be multiple missions and solutions that lead up into one? Fine. But the problem is if you have too many streams and you try to get to, I'm going to say it, too cute, if you're trying to appeal to the Academy, to the Golden Globes, to the art house moments, you get off the path and track of a simple James Bond. Put a badass character in tough situations that, from a heroic standpoint, it's not about facing your fears. It's about embracing those fears and pushing forward. That's what a hero is. You're going to have a winning formula. Don't overcomplicate the plot. All right. The last one I'm going to throw out, because we could sit here all day with multiple ones, but the last one I'm going to throw out, and I think it's a relatively important one. When hiring the next Bond, do not try to be too unique. And why do I start off with this? Well, I think what's happening is there's a lot of discussion right now externally. I don't know what's happening within Amazon about how do we get really unique to either adopt a new audience or do something differently. So we come up with a lot of different aspects of James Bond that we can change. We can change, people talk about changing the gender of James Bond. We talk about changing the culture of James Bond, skin color. When I say culture, by the way, they don't have to be British. They could be this, they could be that, they can be American. All these questions, all these could-have-bees come up because people feel like, oh, we need to do something unique, potentially. I'm saying I don't want my Bond 26 to wear a mask of I need to be unique and different. I need to walk away from who James Bond is. And typically, James Bond has been a British, or played by a British guy who could be fallible, but can also be charming, who can capture the eye and the attention of both men and women. You know, what is the old saying? I know it's pejorative, but what the old saying is, men want to be him and women want to be with him. Such a horrible thing nowadays, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want us to try to be overly unique and cute and different. I remember I was being interviewed by, I forget the show, but it's like a BBC type show, like the morning show. I think it's called the morning show, in the UK. Really wide distribution. I remember one of the hosts, she asking me, you know, can Bond be a woman? And I said, well, I think that's lazy. I think it's lazy to even entertain that, because why not write great plots and entertainment for women? Why do you need to do the kind of like Ghostbusters replacement of men and women and genders? And it's the same with everything. Like, why is there such a yearn with some people to change the face of James Bond, to change who he is, to change where he is, to change his accent? I even hear a couple people saying, make James Bond American. As an American, I don't want James Bond as an American. My James Bond is British accent, from Britain, unless he's from Ireland or Australia, and I will forgive you for that. But I don't understand why there's this drive to say, you know something, let's change it all around. I'm not against change. I'm not against experimenting. What I am kind of scratching my head with is why we need to have this drive to really put butts in seats, to entertain people in the world of James Bond, as opposed to just finding a great actor, just a great character that can portray all the things that we love about Bond, but at the same time be this almost cartoonish superhero character in the world of James Bond that happens to be, wait for it, James Bond. So difficult? I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to give you things that I do not want in the new James Bond. I thought it'd be kind of a different discussion. Was it blunt? Was I being a blunt instrument? Sorry, that sometimes happens, but you know what? It comes from passion. It comes from my passion as a Bond fan. I'd like to know what you think about. What do you not want? Follow the instructions. What do you not want in Bond 26? Put it down below. I'll read every one of them. Can't wait to see it. In the meantime, this has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. We'll see you all real soon. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching the Bond Experience. If you like what you saw, why don't you subscribe to the channel by clicking this button right here. We'll keep you up on everything new that's happening in the world of Bond. And speaking of something new, here's something new just for you because we know you so well. Talk to you soon.